Welcome to the September 17th Joint Master Plan Work Session. And as we like to do with every meeting, we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, any comments or questions before we start? Chris, where are we headed?
Sure. Well, welcome everybody. Glad to see everybody here and looking forward to this kind of next big step in the initiation of our master plan process. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm going to turn it over to Daphne Daly, our Deputy Director of the department.
Thank you. And thank you guys for making time to talk about some really important master plan stuff. I know for the planning commissioners especially, this is going to be a long day, but I hope a fruitful discussion. I'll go over some of our agenda here just to kind of focus in on what we're hoping to accomplish today, but I want to also put it in a slightly bigger context, and that is, I think it's really important that the commissioners and the planning commission work hand in hand in the update to the master plan. We've had discussion, a couple work sessions with both bodies separately and gotten some really good feedback that we'll try to get some consensus on in terms of the direction for the master plan. But it's also super important that you all have a chance to talk with each other and make sure that we're all on the same page as we go through this process. And a little bit later in the agenda, I'll go through a proposed work plan for what this process could look like. And you'll see a number of opportunities for additional joint work sessions so that we don't get to the end of the process and there are big surprises or somebody thinks we needed to go in a totally different direction. We just want to have some good communication. So thank you for making the time to be here. We have a fairly simple agenda, but I think it'll be some really good discussion. The first thing I want to do is go through what we've heard from you all as sort of the big issues or the key issues that we want to make sure are covered as part of the master plan. We have some state requirements we know we have to cover, but we also want to hone in on the big topics that you all on your own want to make sure we're covering because they're very unique and special to Carroll County. We'll also have some time to get your input on some communication elements. So it's really important that we make this process accessible and relatable for the general public, because ultimately that's who the master plan is designed to serve. So part of that is creating an identifiable branding type of scheme or something that when people see something related to the master plan, they automatically think master plan and know what we're talking about and can provide their input or get some visual cues that that's what they're being asked to do. So we'll get your thoughts on some of those communication elements, and then the final piece will be to go through our work plan, which I'll hand out to you at that point. And at that point, I really want to just focus in on what the big picture is and how we're trying to receive good input from people, communicate with them, and make sure that the end product is something that serves everybody well. All right. Any questions on what we want to do?
I apologize for
Yeah.
the feedback. I asked them if they could up the volume a little bit. I've got an ill-repaired hearing aid, so I apologize, but I'll be okay. Chris is giving me like sign language.
All right, well, maybe I should keep talking so we can get it just at the right level. All right. So, what is next? Building on 60 years of planning in Carroll County. As the commissioners will remember, the last time we met, we talked about a little bit of a history of planning in Carroll County, 60 years this year. And so this is our opportunity to say, what do the next 10 years look like? How can we build on the great success of planning in Carroll County over the last 60 years? Just a little reminder of where we've come from. The plan on the left was our 1964 plan, and the plan on the right is the one that we're currently updating. So it was initially adopted in 2014. It was amended in 2019. You can visually get a quick sense of what's changed over those 50 plus years. And so we have to ask ourselves, where do we go from here? What are the big issues that need to be addressed in 2024? I've taken the feedback that I received from the commissioners at the 2 work sessions we held at the end of June and the end of August, as well as the work session that we held with the Planning Commission at the beginning of August, and tried to distill that into some big buckets. So I just wanted to go through these with you and have a little opportunity for discussion to see if we can get some consensus on the big issues that we want to make sure this master plan is touching on. So the 5 buckets that I put your feedback into include housing options for households of all kinds. And so within that, we're really talking about addressing housing variety, availability, and affordability. The second bucket is an economy that supports the community. So within that bucket, we're talking about providing for economic diversity and development, all the different types of economic activity that support kind of a thriving, strong local economy. That includes growing the tax base and helping to finance the public services that we need. Cultivating and retaining a robust local workforce, and attracting and retaining young people with amenities they want and can afford. So I put that one under economy because I feel like it's not just jobs for young people so that they can live here and work here, but also the types of businesses. And
I'd say something, but then you would dub curse words into what I was I'm not going to say anything. And I don't want to see photos.
you are being recorded. Okay. Third bucket is a commitment to rural Carroll County. So this is something we hear in every conversation, that we have had a commitment to agricultural preservation, the preservation of our conservation lands, the rural character of the county. And so we want to continue that by continuing to invest in ag and conservation land preservation, as well as the kinds of things that help retain the rural and small town character of the county. The fourth bucket is infrastructure that meets the needs of tomorrow. So maintaining an efficient roadway network for local and commuter trips, providing for water and wastewater needs in a constrained environment. So we know there are some challenges. We still need to be able to provide that type of infrastructure so that we can continue to grow. and serve the folks who already have water and sewer. And then lastly, responding to demands for energy generation, storage, and distribution. We know that this is a hot topic, and we need to be able to respond to that and plan for what probably are only going to be growing demands. And lastly, working together to plan the future. So we had a lot of conversation with the commissioners on the need to really strengthen municipal and county partnerships so that we can both identify and achieve mutual goals. And working together with the residents and business owners in the county so we can try to find that balance between what people are familiar with and value and the need for growth and change where that's prudent. So those are the categories that I've kind of grouped these things under. And I just want to pause here to get your feedback on whether there are things that we've heard that are not reflected here, or whether you have some differing ideas about maybe how to organize things, or particular categories that you feel like we need to add on here for our kind of big ideas for the plan to address.
How do we maintain the rural and small town character and also strengthen our partnerships when it seems like the only growth that's happened much in the last 10 years has been in the municipalities? Is that what we want, or is that something we should try to direct some growth other places?
I think that's an excellent discussion for the master plan. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities, and those are things that I think we want to be able to explore. We for sure have small communities that are in our unincorporated parts of the county. Frequently, they're what are known as rural villages. They have a historic pattern of development and potentially some possibilities for continuing to grow. Of course, the availability of water and sewer or wells and septics to serve any growth out there is an issue. But I think that would be something to really dig into. How do we do the retaining the rural character part of that equation and also direct growth to our designated growth areas?
Daphne, a couple things. Infrastructure, I would also include broadband into infrastructure. So, lines of communication include the roads, but they also include the broadband necessity. And we've learned our lesson from the pandemic. So we're putting a lot of effort towards that, but it needs to be, recognized as what is the identifiable milestones associated with putting broadband in place. As far as the municipalities and the county, I absolutely agree. There needs to be a strongest relationship, developed. Down in the Freedom area, Eldersburg is designed or designated as a designated growth area. That's 31,000 folks down in the Freedom area. Should the entire Freedom area be as large as it is? Should we look at identifying it smaller? How can we create an environment that the Freedom District can relate to the rural county? So how does number 5, working together to plan the future, tie into a commitment to a rural county? It's difficult.
Finksburg.
And to a lesser extent, it's Finksburg. It's difficult. That's why I have and I've shared this, not necessarily frustration, but concern that the Freedom Plan doesn't dovetail well with the master plan. And so if we have external plans, which I'm not against, they must nest well or dovetail well, nest well with their, larger plans or master plans. I mean, Peter, you've been a part of this for quite some time, seeing it. I mean, does that resonate? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of my concern, I guess, would be, is that on or off? It doesn't matter. Part of my concern would be, if we don't manage the growth, we can't afford it. We're creating problems that we can't spend our way out of. And so, it's like, we have a fantastic, bike and path plan, but we have no funding for it. That's not a plan. It's a hope. And so, but again, it's great to have a plan. It's great to have a vision, but without any funding, it's not going anywhere. And if we have growth and we want to manage that growth, it's going to come with some additional responsibilities, whether it's police, fire, schools. Y'all know the issues better than I do. So, but those, I think, whether it's Finksburg, Westminster, the Freedom District, all these growth areas that we have.
And I guess something I'd certainly like to ask everybody who's on the commission here, looking to the future and looking ahead at the things that we're envisioning, what have you noticed on the commission over the last several years? Have there been things that we've done in the past that haven't worked well, things that we could change? Are there growing trends with certain areas? For example, with reference to a commitment to rural Carroll County, right? One of the things in the last several years we've noticed is an increase in the number of wineries and alcohol producers. Are you noticing any other kinds of trends like these that we could incorporate into what we see for the future? Because I don't want it just to be about a vision or hope or whatever, but I want it to be reflective of on-the-ground things as well, things that are physical, things that are happening, things that we know are evolving.
We've seen some plans before us to address the aging population, assisted living facilities, places like that. I can tell you that one of the things that we hear all the time, maybe not all the time, is the frustration with folks about the length of time it takes to get through the process. By the time they apply and put shovels in the ground, it's 5, 6, 7 years. We had two brothers that wanted to build a senior living facility up, I think it was in Manchester, that beautiful renderings, beautiful plan, beautiful drawings, very caring. They're both doctors and saw what happened with their parents as they got older. Long story short, it got to the point where it took so long to get through the process, and they came through for final approval, and they said, and it was granted, it was just a stamp at that time from us because it had gone through the other 20 levels, and they said, we can't do it because the economics have changed. The interest rates went up. But so back to your original question, we've seen that need for the aging population, and there's some opportunities there, like these two doctors saw, for that. So that's one thing. I always go back to the plan, the land use consultant survey or whatever that was outsourced, and they came back with some really wonderful information. And one of the things that stuck with me is only 1 or 2% of our land is zoned industrial and commercial, and that's where the bigger bucks are. But we haven't addressed that, or haven't seen things come through to change that or get requests for building or expanding a commercial industrial area. So I don't know if people know about that. I don't know if the municipalities know about that consultancy, finding and all that kind of stuff, that good work that they did. So I don't know if they're on the same page as everybody there.
That's actually an interesting point, because I have spoken to some municipal elected officials, and we mentioned how growth brings its own set of responsibilities with it. Some of these municipal elected officials are interested in changing zoning from residential to industrial or to commercial, because it's a lesser impact on the services that the county provides. And so I don't know if that speaks directly to the heart of what you're getting at with that 1% to 2% of industrial land that will help. Do others know about this? Do others know about that survey?
Well, and the availability of land to do that is super small. The percentage of, it's what are we, 85% farmland, 12% housing, the rest is, the sliver. But we get bigger bang for our buck with the commercial and industrial. So I think there's an opportunity there, but I think people need to know about that to be able to say, the light bulb goes off, and take advantage of that opportunity, which benefits the county.
And we talked about that some during budget because of looking at potential revenue, but a couple things I think affect it. A, you need infrastructure. Hampstead seems to get some commercial stuff because you can get there more easily. Mount Airy, I'm not sure they want it, but they kind of want it sometimes. That's good transportation. And then the other thing we've seen, even existing zoning that's near residential, everybody wants it to be a park or something. They all object to anything being built there. And we need to jump that, because we need revenue.
Yeah.
Like a couple of you have said, if we really want to do a plan, we need to pay for it.
Right.
Or forget the plan. Don't fake it.
Yeah, the other thing that guys, speak up. The other thing we see is lots of, what's the age restricted or 55 and over, however they're categorized. We're seeing a lot of that come before us. There's, properties down off of, property, and the builder or the developer there is a portion of that is going to be that type of community. There's others, obviously, out along Route 26, and the population's not getting any younger. And
But Michael, I think that's a function of the fact that we don't have school capacity. If we allowed someone to build multifamily residential without age restrictions, they'd do it in a heartbeat. But we're not going to allow it because of the school capacity issues. And so, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, which comes first. And the other thing that going to what you were saying about growth is, I've asked the question a couple times, and I don't mean to be esoteric about it, but I think it's an important question to ask is, is the growth, are we pleased with the growth that we're having? You look around and you say, okay, well, and we've said it amongst ourselves, and I don't need to point to anybody specific, but, we've said, well, we know that growth is not the kind of growth that we want. When you look at Frederick, man, it just kind of went poof, like this. And so,
Right.
You don't know it until you see it, what bad growth looks like. And so, are we okay with the growth that we're having? I think that's part of the question of, for this plan is, if we think we're doing well, and we think we're, are we muddling through, or is this really by design what we want? And, the answer may be, guys, it's not horrible. And I actually have a spreadsheet that I'm not going to bore you guys with. I'll send it to you if you want it. But I actually tried to come up with, how many housing starts we have, what's the growth in the school population. I had all these crime rates. I tried to kind of come up with what does the health of our county look like just in statistically. And it was a mess. I don't think it's just information. It's not necessarily good information, it's just information.
The county wasn't a master spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's better. Good answer.
Yes, it's Gordian's knot, trying to come up, but again, if you ask yourself, okay, well, what is good growth? How much, what percentage of housing units do we want to have an increase? What is that healthy rate
Well,
of growth?
So, sitting here, towards the end of 2024, there's very little government property that's out there. So the property that we're talking about is private property. We have determined, when we amended the master plan in 2019, a few changes to some of the private properties that are out there. But if we're talking about changing one property from one to another, or allowances, then we collectively got to be very determined to do that. A good example, down in Eldersburg, there's private property that's commercial on 26, and it was authorized to have a storage facility there. And all heck broke loose because the community did not want a storage facility. Some of the responses that I was getting with more than 200-300 folks in a room were, we don't want this. You need to build a park, you can do something else. I said, I don't own the property. I said, a private owner owns this property. Well, we don't want this. Well, what do you want? And it was almost to the sense, they want X and everything around it to be X. I said, so you want every house to be painted blue. You don't want that. I don't want that. The reason I'm who I am is I want the market to drive the economy. I want the community, and the owner of the property to have the say once we give them the allowances. Now, that's an interesting property because the previous allowances were done in the mid-'60s where there really wasn't any, and then, you jumpstart in, 2015, 2019, whatever the year was. And then, that's what happened. And it's still authorized and allowed to have commercial, a storage facility, because it's still commercial too, and it's on a highway. So I agree that there's very limited industrial and commercial left in this county. I think with all of these summaries, we got to figure out, where does this want us to lead us? Kind of where you're going is, okay, what does right look like? Are we ready to limit what industrial will be allowed or what commercial will be allowed? I don't think we should. I think, again, the market, people are saying, well, why'd you put a 7-Eleven there? I said, I didn't put a 7-Eleven. The property owner sold it and put a 7-Eleven, and they're doing fine, I guess. That's a private business. But that's always one of the questions, and I get it all the time, as you would expect. Why are you doing this on this property? I said, I'm not. This is the allowances on the property. So unless we want to be more restrictive with the master plan, which I don't believe we do, I want it to be more clear with the vision of the master plan. And more clear is to, kind of what Commissioner Guerin shared this morning in your talk, the triangle. These are the things that you have vision for Carroll County. Safety, security, the good schools, job opportunities, So how do we get that through this? And then the other part about, and I'll shut up after this last piece, is we are a very diverse county. The differences between Tawnytown and Manchester and Hampstead to Eldersburg and Mount Airy and Finksburg and everything all in between, we're very, very diverse. We have good lines of communication going east to west, on 70, and then we have a good one going down to 270, basically 27 to 270 down to Bethesda area. Those are the two major lines of highways that we have. How do we maximize those? you know. And again, that goes to that partnership with the towns, you know. But I know I threw a lot out there.
You circled around to something I'd like to talk about that.
Okay.
Because I think we're here to talk about not just the minutia that you're into now, but the larger picture. So the question was asked, how well have we done over the years? So let's take the 60 years. Carroll County's done very well. So I find it's helpful if we compare ourselves to counties around us and where they have made mistakes and where they have done better than we have. Very few of them have done better. Very few of them. So you can put yourself into whatever category you want, whether we're conservative, whether we're middle of the road, whether we're whatever. But we've been very deliberate and very selfish in a way on how we handle our zoning. So when the original master plan was put together, there was a consensus that Carroll County would be very cautious about where, when, and how we put together development and how we can preserve our resources and do it in a way that benefits everyone. So the answer to your question is we've done very well. You also mentioned wineries, so I'll go down that rabbit hole right now. And that just shows you how innovative and flexible agriculture is. So I've never worried that agriculture would be a big deal in Carroll County. It is. And it's been proven year after year after year that the larger public, whether they're connected to agriculture or not, has been very supportive of what they see out of the other end. If you don't believe me, all of you were sitting at the meeting with the power line the other night at the Ag Center. Tell me how many people went up to that microphone that didn't mention the open spaces, the reasons why they moved here, and the reasons why they've stayed here in Carroll County. So when we're talking about growth, we need it. But I think we need to understand where is the inventory. So if you would go into all the municipalities and find where is the inventory, is there room for redevelopment? Is there room for expansion? Is there room for affordable housing in each one of these municipalities? And then figure that out. Then you go back to concurrency management and see how that fits in. And there are some municipalities that, in this county, that will not handle growth. They can't. New Windsor could be one, Union Bridge could be one, the quarrying and the ag pres very well has pushed them inward, which is not a bad thing. Nobody wants to live beside a quarry, but you preserve land beside a quarry. So a lot of this has been delivered. Have we made mistakes? We certainly have, and we paid dearly for some of them. But when you look at the whole, if we wouldn't have the form of government that we have in Carroll County, and then you compare that with the form of government in our neighboring counties, we'd be in a whole different place. So I want to be a little positive here at this meeting. And I know there are questions and problems, but the areas that are designated for growth, I think we need to really take a hard look at that and say, how much growth can we sustain in those areas? And maybe that is the answer.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you.
Okay?
100%. That's why, you know, again, going back to the Freedom Plan, should that, you know, stand as is, or should we look at that and how that nests with the master plan? And should the designated growth area of the Freedom District be as large as it is currently, or should it be more restrictive? No, I think you're right. There's a lot of positive trends happening in Carroll County.
I want to comment on the Finksburg plan. We're so limited in the Finksburg plan, in the Finksburg area, because one of the main goals down there was to protect the reservoir. So that almost hamstrings what we want to do. The other real concern I have is legislative concerns. Governor O'Malley put in and pushed the the smart growth bill's SB 236, which was called a septic bill. I always said that was the greatest thing that ever happened to ag preservation, because it limited a certain amount of growth out in the ag areas as part of his master plan for smart growth. And Carroll County was way ahead of him, even before that, way ahead of that. So we were like the smart growth leaders before anybody even knew what smart growth was. So that sort of limits what we can do. Now I'm starting to see legislation coming down and directives coming down where the commissioners rightly decided not to have solar on ag. And so some higher up, nameless, faceless group tells us that what we do here locally is of no importance. That is a grave concern. We have a housing bill that's come down that is so vague now that directs us to find ways of putting affordable housing in Carroll County, and I'm all for that. But it's so vague that we don't even know what direction unless we go to a higher source of nameless, faceless people to tell us whether we're doing the right thing or not. That is a grave concern of mine as a longtime resident, whether I've been here a day or 100 years.
We also spent a good amount of time this morning talking about that exact bill, the House Bill 538, where we're supposed to discuss code changes to get more affordable housing. And it was a good, healthy discussion, and I think we've made some inroads on that. So we are addressing some of these issues, but this takes time. You know, we can't make all these decisions at one time. And I think it's great, frankly, that we're having meetings with the commissioners and the planning commission. We should do it on a regular basis so that we're all going in the same direction instead of, you know, we're going one way and all of a sudden you guys aren't interested in doing that. So, you know, this is a good starting point.
Didn't the housing bill for Carroll County really affect Warfield? Was there more to it? I mean, there were four categories underneath it from what I remember. And the one category that really had its effects was really, for Carroll County, was Warfield. I mean, it was really focused on the city and Baltimore County and a few others. But for us, although I may not agree with the bill itself, but for the county, it really was focused on Sykesville, Warfield, which goes right back to the schooling issue and other concerns. But that was the one targeted area. From what I remember, right? There was no more to it than that, so.
Well, you'll see this before too long, but there is language in there related to housing that is, affordable housing that is constructed by a nonprofit, which is another,
Right,
that's where the
right.
planning commission focused their discussion, because Warfield
Yeah.
is down in the town of Sykesville.
Yeah,
but-
okay.
I think back to, like what you said, Carroll County's done pretty well over the years. When we change, we gotta watch it. I've seen uncontrolled growth, I've seen too much control of growth, and I've seen okay control of growth, and we gotta watch we don't get to either extreme. One of the things that I think hurts us with affordable housing is the 55 and older communities. We're forcing developers to do that because of school. When Carroll County put in restrictions because of schools, we were building schools. The system was overpopulated. It's underpopulated now. It has plenty of room. I argued with a commissioner when I was Board of Ed, why does Carroll County care on the population of schools? That's the school's problem. And I think the school agrees with that. There's plenty of room for redistricting. There's plenty of room to do some relatively inexpensive additions. So why do we tell a builder, why do we force them to do 55 and older communities because of a school when there's plenty of room in our schools? It's very foolish. And I think back when we put in those restrictions, fire and EMS probably made sense. Well, we're throwing $30+ million at EMS. If they come back and say, I'm sorry, you can't build this housing because we're not adequate, then something's rotten. So I think some of those restrictions maybe need to be looked at, but I totally agree with you. Over the years, when you look at the counties around us, we done pretty good. But the other thing we did, back to the schools, and I don't know who decides that, the commissioners buy the property and the schools do it. We built Century in the wrong place, Winters Mill in the wrong place because of misunderstanding smart growth, and then we built Manval in the wrong place. We totally screwed up the high school system in Carroll County, and I could get into some of the reasons why they were in the wrong place. Some of it was politics, some of it was obstinance, but it happened, and now we got to live with it. And I mean, Man Valley, we had no state money. Liberty, we built on the cheap, and now it needs to be probably totally redone. And so we've made some mistakes during the time, but overall, we've done pretty well.
And I actually will reinforce that. You know, Ralph, you had said a few minutes ago, talking about the things that we've done right over the years, too. And you're right, we can't lose track of that. One of the things that I asked at the very beginning of this process, and I'm sure Chris probably had to climb through an attic somewhere, was to find the original 1964 master plan to see what people were looking at for this county, several decades ago. And when you look at those side by side, the 1964 map and the 2014-2019 master plan maps, you can see that consistency over time. And so obviously something we are doing is working. It is turning out right. My question about, what can we do to improve on what we're doing is not so much, I promise not to talk about, doing anything wrong, but so much as to enhance what we are doing. If on that note, if it takes 5 to 7 years to get a senior housing, I mean, is that too much time? I mean, even beyond that, if I am somebody who wants to open a restaurant or a store, or if I want to, begin a farm, what things do I have to do in order to make my American dream possible in this county? What ways can we get out of the way of people so they can continue to pursue that American dream, so they can continue to make sure that they have the ability to chase down what they want to chase down, without, like Commissioner Kyler said, over-encumbering them, being too controlling, right? I look at these two plans. For example, I look at the 1964 plan and looking at where we were going to end up, or where people thought we were going to end up back in the 1960s. There was supposed to be a reservoir up in the northwestern section of the county, right along the Monocacy, and that's not, obviously that's not there. And so I always want to know why. Why did things turn out the way that they did? Why have they come to pass the way that they have? One of the things that I think strikes me about the 1964 plan versus the most recent master plan is the amount of emphasis we've placed on agriculture. And you are absolutely correct when you say that it's amazing how a farmer can adapt to different changes, can adapt to different. So in a situation like that, where we have that core value in place, the agriculture, how do we go about reflecting certain changes? So we hold on to that core in agriculture, but we allow a farmer to say, okay, well, the cows didn't work out 10 years ago, so now I'm going to go with bottles of wine. You gentlemen certainly have had plenty of experience with that over the last several years as Planning Commission. What other trends are you seeing? What other ways are you seeing that are evolving that we can use to hold on to what we have?
Well, all plans don't work out, as you mentioned the reservoir.
Right.
Well, then it made common sense not to put that in because it was right next to a dump site. So that took care of that. There's some things that take care of themselves, but getting back to what you talked about, the long-range planning for things as important as schools, I think we sometimes underestimate how important that is and how it's going to mean. And redistricting might be the answer to that if we could convince enough people to get on that bandwagon. So that could be taken care of there. But I still go back to this. I think we need to know what the inventory of buildable land is, not only in the municipalities, but the conservation zone, the ag zone, and then where can we manipulate some of that to create what we have out here at the airport? That to me is a wonderful sight out there, and what has happened out there, where we can lure business in to provide more of the tax revenue that we're looking for. And the other key to it, of course, and we're making inroads on that with our technology center out here, to teach the kids in the school system now to learn skills that they can keep in the county and run with, which could be part of this elder care thing going on. That's just an example. So we're heading in the right direction. We just need to tweak this and tweak that to make some of your concerns happen.
So I agree with so much of what you're sharing. So now let's bring it back up to the big picture. And over the next 10 years, how much revenue is it going to take to do and meet these demands, and what are the expenses associated with doing this? In other words, if it's 1 to 2% inventory of industrial commercial, what do we expect to have as far as revenue? You know, the Beatty property, you know, they're coming back and saying $10 million, you know, eventually will be revenue generating from the Beatty property once developed their mixed use and single-family homes and the age restricted. Excuse me. That gives us something to work with for that property. If we look at things in that way, we can then determine over the next 5, 10 years, X years, this will be the revenue coming into our county if we were to develop all of this in order to meet the demands of the schools and other things and other services that our community deserves. This is the revenue that's going to have to be pulled in addition or less. I mean, we can lower taxes, we can raise taxes, you know. All depends on the revenue coming in from everything else to meet these demands and these needs. Those are the tough questions that I think we need to have in preparation so we don't get sticker shock. You know, when we did utility rates change in the Freedom area, there was sticker shock because we had not changed those utility rates in years, and we should have. Without a doubt, we should have. And I was, you know, up front saying, yeah, I'm going to be paying it just like you are, but we have to meet the demands. I don't want sticker shock, you know. So we either got to climb in a certain path with revenue or understand that we will not grow in a certain path, you know, in expenses. As far as schools, I don't want to say it's water under the bridge. Like you said, Ralph, there was decisions made that may not have been the, I won't say most educated, but the long-term decisions associated with them. But that's where we're at right now, especially with the blatant ones that we know. Piney Reservoir, you know, it's a lake. It's designed not to be a lake. It's designed to be a 300-acre, I believe, reservoir. And it was determined by the community to keep it as a lake. We put it out front, and almost as quick as the power line, you know, response is the response we got when it came to Piney Lake, that people did not want that. I said, well, if you're not going to get that, then the expansion is going to then be limited, you know, westward. So the impacts of that. And those are things we just have to recognize. We're either going to make a long-term decision and make Piney Reservoir into Piney Lake into Piney Reservoir and make it a workable reservoir. It's not what I'm saying to everybody out there, but I'm saying a decision has to be made in order to do that or not do that. So.
See, I would like to see, and I'm going to stop talking, but I would like to see us increase densities where we can increase densities instead of creating lots where they're too big to mow and too small to farm. like to see that eliminated. I don't know if we can, but I'd like to see that. I'd like to see.
I think we can.
I'd like to see half-acre lots instead of acre lots. I'd like to see 4 houses here and none over there, moving forward. I think that might be part of the hard decisions that we're gonna have to make moving forward to get to this affordable housing. Because, you know, it's sure cheaper to buy a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot than it is to buy a 2.5-acre lot, and then you wind up, you can't mow it anyway, and Lord knows what it does to the environment every time you mow that darn thing. So, I think these are the things that we need to be, not maybe a rich man's county, but an all man and all woman county. So that everybody has an opportunity. And one of the reasons why I'd like to see this inventory is where can we concentrate and put more density and live well with it, mixed use, whatever it takes. And I'm done.
Yeah, I like that and I've argued, don't smack me. If you want 1 acre lots on public water and sewer, you ought to be shot. My kids, they want the house to be 3/4 of their lot. And let them cluster, do whatever, but my other worry, and you guys evidently talked about it today, is the state. And they're so stupid. They want affordable housing, but MDE's gonna double the requirements because of potential climate change issues. That, we could see developers walk just because of that. I mean, I can't imagine a development with double, or even an individual house with double the requirements. It blows people's budgets. What used to be, you know, a little bit on the side of your budget is now a major part of your budget, and they're how can they double that and say we want affordable housing? That doesn't make sense. So we gotta try to plan for what the state's gonna make us do, and I understand, and we've argued this, solar was a good example. Who are they to tell us? But I think we're gonna lose. But we gotta fight it. We gotta fight it to the end. And those community solar things, they're not a pinch in the grand scheme of things for energy. It's bull. Almost had you dub me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, please.
So there's been obviously, I think we're covering a lot of ground here. So as far as I'm concerned, the 2 biggest threats to our county are complacency, thinking everything's just perfect and it's never going to be perfect. And as rightly stated by several folks in the room here, the state legislation, the issues that are being forced upon us, whether that's blueprint or stormwater management requirements, MDE, housing, solar, you name it, extremely concerning, even down to what we can zone and where we have to zone it. I think as a whole, on average, the board doesn't like any of it. I personally feel as though it's an assault on our own home rule and our own self-governance. One thing we keep coming back to is this issue of commercial and industrial land. And I have to admit, I do not know how that process would work. I do not know how we would go about changing the zoning. That is something that I would like for the staff to take a look at, and at least in my case, educate me on how that would even work. Where could it work? What will we be allowed to do? And at that point, we could have a further discussion as to what we feel, is appropriate. That's something that I think keeps coming up time and time again. This issue of the designated growth areas being some of the best places for growth, I think that's right on the money as well. That also at the same time relieves a lot of issues of of water and sewer and where this water comes from. I wanted to maybe switch gears slightly and just have a quick conversation about this issue of housing affordability, okay? I do not understand what that's supposed to mean. So nobody's going to build an affordable house right now. And if we think we're going to have somebody build an affordable house and make it just so somebody from Carroll County can buy it, you probably haven't left Carroll County in a long time, because that is not going to happen. The market drives that. Affordable housing is a serious issue throughout the country. Affordability, period, is an issue throughout the country. There's a lot of kids with, in their 20s and early 30s with good paying jobs who are living with mom and dad, and it's not because they're slackers. It's because they can simply not afford, and it just makes no economic sense to do otherwise. So, we spent a lot of time on this issue of housing affordability. I know that the county sanctioned a house study that is ongoing. I actually voted against appropriating the money for it because I think we're already going to know what it says. But I do want to make sure going forward, if we're going to spend a lot of time talking about housing affordability, I'd really like to know what that's supposed to mean, because the market drives everything. We cannot force people to build anything affordable. I think when we talk about affordability, we should be focusing on some of the things we've already talked about, whether we realize it or not. It's at maintaining a county that people can afford to live in. And I think that's the issue of this affordability. So I'll open it up to anybody here who's got some ideas about that, but if we're gonna, I really don't want us to spend an enormous amount of time in this master plan process talking about housing affordability if none of us can kind of come up with a tangible explanation as to what that would even look like.
Maybe we should change the word to availability.
Possibly, maybe that's the right answer.
Forces take care of the rest.
Affordability is like redistricting, and I said it 6 years ago. Redistricting is not a four-letter word. Affordability is not a four-letter word. We need to have houses that are as reasonably priced as possible in some of the market. And when I ride down Old Baltimore Road and they're starting at 700,000 or 800,000, that ain't it.
No, you're absolutely right. And we've talked about it in planning and zoning, and different people have different opinions, and that's okay. But I think we need a good, well-rounded portfolio of housing, getting to your point. Because yes, maybe affordable is not the right word we should be using. That's up for anybody's debate. I know I'd asked staff a while ago, we've talked a little bit about it, but we haven't talked about it in planning and zoning. I know you and I have talked about it. I'd still like to see more of a conversation on the concept of moderately priced dwelling units. I think we need to look at that. I know we've talked a little planning and zoning recently about mixed use. I think the challenge is we've got to figure out what works. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, whether they're in my district, they're in, Commissioner Vigliotti's district. I've had people and friends, and a lot of them, they're like, my kids can't afford to live here. So if you can't afford to live here, whether it's mixed use, single family, an apartment, you're not going to stay here. And of course, that all dovetails into talking about workforce and keeping youth in the community. And we had a meeting several months back over at the community college, and one of the speakers pointed it out. I think Bestie and I were talking after he spoke, and he said the one thing you don't have is housing. He goes, you've got great people here. You've got the education system. He's like, you have nowhere for them to live. And, that was the one thing, if we look back historically, when Random House was built, it's why they built it here. It's why, we have that, because they looked at the education system. They looked at the availability of the workforce. We have people. We can, there's things we can add in this community. I ask people all the time that move here, and, I know people have differing opinions of, when are you a Carroll County resident? Well, I'm sorry, you don't have to get off the Mayflower and walk here to be a resident of Carroll County. Whether you moved here last week, last month, 10 years ago, to me, as long as you're somebody that wants to be part of the community, you're a Carroll County resident. And the thing that I find so challenging is, and it's interesting, I like to ask people is, why'd you move here? Typical answer, the schools. We know we have great schools. We have a lot of great things, the environment. But my next question to so many of these people is, well, where do you go for X? Because I know we don't have that here. So do you drive 45 minutes back to where you lived? How does that work? I mean, yes, we've got internet, Amazon, whatever, but, we need to look a little bit at that and figure out, where do these people decide that move here to then shop? Because we don't have all the amenities. We're never going to, and that's not necessarily bad or good. But where do they spend their money, and how do we get to keep it in Carroll County? You've got, a huge chunk of our population that commutes every day. Do they come home after hours and shop? I doubt it. They're stopping someplace on the way. And that's okay, because they commute. But to me, one of the things we've got to figure is, how do we keep more money in Carroll County that's here, as well as the housing issue? I think they kind of go hand in hand.
I think if we look at, just be very pragmatic about this and say the 25 to 40-year-old, swath, that 15-year-old swath, how much would they have to make living within their means, and be able to afford a place here in Carroll County?
Yeah.
Very few people. I mean, $60,000, salary? Can they live within their means and own a house here in Carroll County? No.
Commissioner, we're also.
75,000.
We're
So-
also assuming that the next generation is gonna be, would want to own a house.
So,
That
okay,
generation might
okay,
only
yeah.
need 2 rooms,
Okay.
a refrigerator, a microwave,
Can-
and a television.
Right, so my,
My oldest started out in a condo out by Western Maryland.
Yeah.
Went to a duplex, went to a house I couldn't afford. As soon as his kids are gone, he wants to be back in the condo.
I agree.
but the point is,
That's what
so,
I'm getting at.
okay, so no problem. Can they lease a home if they're making $50,000 or $60,000 and live within their means? It is still very difficult to do. Let's say a home is $1,500 to lease,
But the home might not be on their horizon.
No, I'm not saying a home, I'm saying an apartment to rent. They can't afford it. They still, to live within their means, now they're on their own insurance, they have an insurance, possibly. I mean, I'm working through it with my kid, and it is, definitely a stepping process. So I think affordability may be, accessibility, availability may be other words to use regarding this. But let's just be pragmatic. You're right. Some don't want to own and may have to lease or stay with their family. But if you take a salary and you say $60,000, that's a pretty good salary, I think. Can they live in a home within their means or rent a place within their means? I think it's very difficult for them to do that. So,
I think we're taking a hard reach to try to meet all those things, but there's some things that we can't control.
so therefore, should we be looking at, in that case, affordable housing in order to do that, which means that you're subsidizing something to allow them to be in that house. If that's what we want to do collectively, then that's something we have to have that conversation. If that's something we don't believe should be done in our county, then we have to have that conversation. And we say we are not going to focus on subsidizing homes. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but we got to be true to ourselves.
That's right.
And that's my concern, because you need a $350,000 home to be built, or probably a little bit more now, just to break even in revenue for the county. And who can afford a home like that?
Short of doing exactly what you're saying, you coming up with some sort of subsidy where, to qualify for that, you gotta live and work in the county, or providing somebody with a financing, buying down points or something like that. Some program that we do not have.
Right.
And frankly, probably don't have the political will to initiate. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
And again, I've got a son who's a teacher, and $60,000 is a teacher in our county. And having housing that people can afford based on that salary, and so that they don't have to commute through a county or two to get to their job in Carroll County, that's a great goal. I do think, and I may step in it by saying this, I do think our zoning ordinances have a hole. And I think the hole is mixed use development. The Beatty property was a property that was a golden opportunity for us to do if we could do it right. We don't want to do it poorly. If we can't do it correctly, let's not do it. And so in that respect, our zoning ordinances are terrific. But if we wanted to do a mixed-use development where someone could come in, do retail and office, and then a combination of multifamily. You know, that may be a way to encourage that type of development, and but it's going to be more dense. It's going to create traffic issues. So again, there are unintended consequences to this stuff
Right.
when we start talking about it. But I think that's one of the things we ought to kind of put in the back of our heads, in terms of the back of our minds, about, you know, at some point, you know, we're going to end up, if you do something like that, you're going to end up with something that looks like an awful lot like what they built down towards Linganore High
That's right.
School, you know, that's right there off there, the Linganore Lake. You're going to have something that's got a retail component, it's got an office component, and it's got multifamily housing.
And that's what they're doing on 26 by Clean Mill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what that is, across the street from 3 over 55 apartments.
That's right.
I mean, so you have
But again,
both.
what I will say to you is, what got the community upset was, that's not what we would consider, what I would consider well done. So, and so, you know, well, so what are you looking for? It's, what Pete, you know, describe to me what you want. I'm gonna have to put you in my car, and I'm gonna have to take you someplace. Because, and again, it's, you know it when you see it. And, but that kind of property, that kind of mixed-use development, I think is not necessarily what the community wants, that type of.
Well done by the community wanting it there, or well done in the eyes of, like, I mean, the builder's ability to build? I mean,
Well done
You know.
in that it's not really, it's, they're 900 square foot units or less. They're efficiency apartments. So from a rent standpoint, it's gonna be right where you want it to be. From a, you know, is it the kind of place that my son, as a teacher, fresh out of college, would have wanted to rent? No, he wouldn't have wanted to rent there. He would have preferred to have a place where he could mingle with other people like him, you know, around the pool on a weekend day. You know, more of a community, rather than just a place for me to go from, you know, 7 till I gotta get up in the morning and 7 o'clock and go back to my job. It's not, there's really no, we're attracting people to that development, and there's really nothing there for the people who would live there. Does that
But-
make sense to you?
no, it does, but those people that we're attracting to that development, we also want to work in Carroll County.
That's true.
And live and commute within the county.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a space and a place for the 1.2 million and above, then there's a space and a place for the 600,000 above, and then there's the space and place for 400, and then there's this. And this is just as valuable as these over here. It doesn't bring in the tax base or the revenue, but this idea that it doesn't bring in the community that is desirable to others in the community, I mean, I want to embrace everybody, from that large to that small, and let them grow from there in other places. I mean, someone's got, you know, there's a market for that.
Oh, for sure.
And it's a market here in Carroll County that I believe we should, and we, not just should, we have the responsibility and opportunity to embrace. And it's frustrating when people say, well, I understand that's a need, but I don't want it in my backyard, type of feeling, so.
If I
That's
could
all.
jump in here, I just want to keep an eye on our time, and there are a couple of other things we want to make sure we have a chance to go through with you. I've been taking a lot of notes and trying to kind of see how what we've been talking about here so far fits in with some of what's on the screen there. I haven't heard a lot that's radically different from what we've got. I have made note of some very specific ideas that could help us address some of what's listed here. And I think this is a great starting point for those future discussions about how we do address housing, variety, availability, affordability, how we do grow the tax base. But I'd like to be able to move on if we can, but I want to just get a sort of a consensus check first to make sure that there's not anything that we have not touched on, at least in this slide, that's radically different and doesn't fit under one of these categories. We can for sure continue to break them apart and think about all the different ways that we could address or tackle some of these topics. But I just want to make sure that we're able to continue moving forward with this.
One thing that was, I've heard about a long time ago is that Carroll County was considered an island, and it wasn't a very good way of saying it, that we were island, down in Annapolis, and we played only amongst ourselves. So should we, as a vision for Carroll County, again, to be nested into the regular, the other parts of the state and the region? We are strong within the region. We have leadership across the regional players. Should that be a part of Carroll County as a vision to have that look at us, mentality? Now, I'm not saying I want to be Howard County, and glamorize themselves in the newspapers and magazines. However, there is value in saying, look at Carroll County, the best wineries in Maryland, the only place where we're actually meeting a 50-year-old goal of 100,000 acres of, conservation and perpetuity. What's our standing in Maryland, not what's our standing away from Maryland. I don't know if that all makes sense, if any of it does, but.
I always took that as a badge of honor.
What's that?
I always took that,
Yeah.
Carroll County was an island as a badge of honor, because when I was involved in Annapolis, it seemed like eventually most of the counties came to us and said, you know what, you did it right the first time, and over the years, I wish we'd have taken that same course. You also mentioned a county that I always used when I toured the country, talked about agricultural land preservation, and I used the one county that you talked about as an example of what not to do.
Yeah, well, I just threw Howard County out just because I threw Howard. It could be in Frederick or Prince George's or Montgomery, or any of the other 24.
As far as engaging
yeah.
in a leadership role for the area,
Yeah.
I think we should. Absolutely, we should have a leadership role, but so much of that is politics. That makes it almost impossible for us to take that.
And I think the two-edge, what we're seeing with even Mako in Annapolis, we need the other rural counties on our side fighting, even though we don't particularly like everything they've done, but we need to keep them on our side, and we still lose to the big counties.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have relatives I don't like either, but
Exactly.
What if I were to add a bullet under the working together to plan the future to address strengthening state and regional partnerships and recognition of local
Something
leadership
towards
and
that,
land
so we're
use?
looking internally and externally. But yeah, and if it stays on the table, it stays on the table. If it gets pushed off, we push it off, so, yeah.
What did you just say? What's on the table?
I said, no, we put something on the table and for discussion, and if it stays on the table, that's great. If not, we just take it off the table.
Yeah.
But,
I think we have worked on this House Bill 538 this morning, and I think we got some, good ideas on that. And we are working with the state because it's mandated now.
right,
And so, why fight it? Let's
Right.
try to get the best that we can do out of it. To me, part of the problem was years ago, when the philosophy of a board of commissioners was 1 to 3 acre lots. We just wasted a lot of territory where we could, be in the process of rezoning, which we're going to do with the the 10-year plan here. So to me, rezoning is really important for what we have left.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's all we can do at this point.
I think the state has taken care of our addressing housing variety, availability, and affordability. So I would like,
It was
Commissioner Guerin was saying, why spend a lot of time on it? It's mandated. You're not going to change what the state is pushing down the pike. There it is.
But can we look
Only
at other
part.
areas for water and sewer? You know, the towns have some, the South Carroll has some, and that's where you can have good mixed-use development if we have places where we can provide water and sewer. You know, and unfortunately, the Finksburg area, because it's so close to the reservoir, I mean, we pretty much depend on water now through the Liberty Reservoir. You know, these reservoirs that we were going to build years ago, I mean, it's still owned by the county, but a lot of it is steep slopes anyhow, so you really can't develop that anyhow. So we're really limited as to where we can actually build mixed use.
And I agree, and for that end of the table, a couple guys have mentioned inventory, a couple guys have meant making the best use of what we got left. Is that realistic? Can we get an inventory?
Yes.
And we desperately need it to make those decisions, because if in the 60s, 3-acre lots were okay, we can't change that. But
that's too
moving
late.
forward, we can.
Yep.
We have quite a bit of detailed information on most of everything that we've been talking about here today, but for sure, our buildable land inventory is kept up to date and has incredibly detailed calculations about potential lots in all parts of the county.
He's gonna do all the work, so. We need a commitment. We need
yeah.
a commitment. And Roberta won't even look at me.
Okay, so are we good to generally move forward with these sort of focal points for the plan, in addition to the things that we need to build in as part of our state requirements, the required components of the plan?
So, I am not trying to be a contrarian here, and I'm not trying to be difficult, and I might be in the minority. But, everybody heard my comments about, trying to define what housing availability or housing affordability is. When I look at several of these, I don't know, first of all, there's some things in here that government simply cannot solve. And we are the county government, and we're trying to create a master plan that fosters some good outcomes. But I still just don't understand how we're going to do some of these things. And my concern, again, going forward, is we're looking at tangible actions that we can take. What was mentioned earlier by Commissioner Rothstein was along those lines. We're talking about affordability. You're probably talking about subsidies. That may be a great idea. It may not be a good idea, but that's where you are with that. So does that mean you're providing subsidies for people that are part of, the county fire and EMS, the sheriff's department, something of that sort? But I look at that. I look at the bullet for economic diversity. I look at cultivating and retaining a robust local workforce. I look at attracting and retaining young people with amenities they want to and can afford. I look at some of those, and I think they're valid bullet points, and I think those are important goals, but I just don't know how we're going to achieve them through a master plan, and I'm concerned about that.
Some of them contradict each other.
And some of them may very well contradict each
Diversity
other.
and development, that's not gonna grow the tax base. That's gonna give us less revenue. And that's okay, maybe, but
Yeah.
they contradict each other.
Yeah, so you're correct. So hopefully, again, I'm just throwing this out there because I think we're having a very good discussion. But I don't know how we're going to achieve some of these goals. And if we can't, then let's look at some of the things we can change. That's all I'm going to propose.
Sometimes you
yeah.
have to work with smoke and mirrors. And so you have to put.
Well,
you have to-
don't, I will not agree to that. I will not agree with you there.
Hear that every week.
No, I don't.
But we have to make sure that we certain overriding interest off our backs while we do our thing here.
Well,
So, you know, it's just like the chicken and the egg here with economic development and housing options. What comes first? Do we get the industry first and then get the housing? Do we get the housing first and get the people, then get the industry? Nobody knows the answer to that. Nobody knows. So the local government can only do so much. That's what you're getting at, and I totally agree with you. Our role, maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, maybe I'm on the wrong commission, but all we can do is to help direct based on our constituencies. So there are certain things that people want: education, housing, whether it's affordable or not. Somebody's going to live in Carroll County. Tawnytown is a great example, and I meant to ask you the question. When I go through Tawnytown, it's like all hell is broken loose. It's building development everywhere going on. You have a valley up there. So it looks like somebody is moving into Carroll County and living there because there are plans on the books for Tawnytown to grow even more at a very fast rate. So there's affordable housing coming in for somebody that can afford it, and somebody's going to stay there and live there. So that's out of my control. Whoever buys this house and whoever lives there. And that has nothing to do with subsidization. So I don't think I'm ever going to worry about a desirable place to live as long as we keep it safe. And we're sure doing that. And as long as we keep, you know, somebody coming up with a fire call when we need it, with whatever it takes. So, you know, I totally agree with Commissioner Giron that maybe sometimes we're reaching too far. And we should be satisfied with what we can really do and do it right, and then let the chips fall where they may and see which comes first, the egg or the chicken.
And you brought up a very interesting point. So the last couple of years that I was on the city council in Tawnytown, I pushed back against the continuing development of the city. Not least of which because we didn't have the adequate facilities to encompass the growth that was going to occur. And you know, probably the last major vote I made when I was on the city council was to vote against annexing land for residential development. And so the city is in a place now where they're looking at, okay, well, we've annexed all of this land and we can't possibly continue to residentially develop it, so what do we do with it? How do we, and this speaks to one of the bullet points that Commissioner Giron noted about economic diversity and development, right? We have to grow the tax base. We can't afford the strain on our system with all of the additional housing units and individuals who would be moving into those units. So how do you do the best that you can otherwise, and that's to grow the commercial and the industrial base where you can. And so that's a very astute observation that you made about the way that Tawnytown has developed over the last couple of years. You know, so for me, and you and Commissioner Giron, you know, both made the salient point about, well, you know, the government of any kind should not be trying to direct and control specific ends. We should create the conditions for those ends to be possible. And so, you know, for example, working with the municipalities to say, okay, well, we can fast track the zoning process or something, or if you want to annex land not for residential growth but for commercial development, we can fast track that. We can't specifically control and say, okay, well, there's going to be a Taco Bell there and a Chick-fil-A there and a Walmart there, but we create the conditions for people to thrive, to chase the American dream. And, you know, I totally understand also this idea of being a leader in this region, but so much, and I agree with Commissioner Rossi, you know, so much of what we've done, though, has been because we've done things our own way. You know, I'm 38 years old. I moved here when I was 10, and my parents brought us here. It wasn't because of the schools. It was because of the lifestyle, the culture, the small town atmosphere that was here. It reminded both of my parents of where they had grown up. And, you know, when we moved here, you know, it wasn't a question of, well, you know, now we're here and do we continue to vote the way that we used to? Do we continue to live the way that we used to? No, we want to be a part of who this county is. And I think that you tend to get, you brought up the very valid point a little while ago about the opposition to the power lines that are coming through. People don't want to see those coming through because they know what it's going to do to this county. They love what this county is, and they don't want the county to change demonstrably from what it is at its heart. So, creating conditions for the county to thrive, I'm completely on board with that, right? But trying to specifically tailor, a particular outcome, that's not the government's business. So when we talk about saying, okay, well, we can work with Tawnytown or Manchester or Westminster to let them annex land for commercial development. We can't sit there and say, okay, you have to put a Walmart there. That's going to be up to the market to decide. And then that's one of the, again, going back to what I had said a little while ago, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to see the 1964, the original master plan, to see what was that trajectory that we were going after back in 1964. How close have we come to realizing what it was that we set out to accomplish back in the 1960s? Where are we today? And how do we continue pushing ourselves in that direction without being so specific and so particular as to prevent something good from happening? And so, Ralph, I'm with you completely, and Commissioner Karen for that matter too. I brought up the example of the wineries with agriculture. Right? A lot of citizens, and Commissioner Rossi and Commissioner Kyler both brought up this point as well. A piece of land is zoned a certain way, and people don't like the way that it's zoned. One of the things that we hear a lot is, well, we want to see more land agriculturally preserved. We want to see more of that in our area. And so, tapping into the ability to meet trends or to meet certain ways of doing things. For example, again, the wineries, right? 15 years ago, I don't think any of us would have said, okay, well, wineries are going to be the way that everybody wants to spend their weekend. It was, when I was a kid, if you went to a winery, you were rich and you had money to spend on the weekend. That wasn't something that people my age did on the weekends. But now it's what everybody wants to do on the weekend. And so, for example, in an area down near Eldersburg where people are saying we want to see more ag preservation, do we have it in our wherewithal in the future of the master plan to say, okay, we can do that, provided that you're going to fit into the overall grand scheme of things. Ag pres down in that area with some more wineries would certainly accomplish that goal of people wanting to not see development, but also see that agricultural preservation, but it would also tap into that economic diversity and development opportunity as well, because that would be allowing, somebody would have the opportunity to create a viable business that was beyond just agriculture. And so, again, I know I'm talking in circles at this point, but I'm in agreement. The less specificity that I think we engender into this current incarnation of the master plan, I think the better. Owning to the trends that we've seen over the years, owning to the trajectory, and owning to our values. Because, and going back to what I said a minute ago, my parents moved us here because there was something amazing about this place. I mean, that's why I'm still here. That's why I ran for commissioner, because this is my home. I don't want to see this change. I don't want it to become something that it's not. We moved away from where we moved away from for a reason. And I don't want to see that same kind of thing happen to the place that I came to escape to. This is where I want to find a wife and have kids and raise a family, and I want them to have that same experience that I had growing up. And I know that I'm not alone. A lot of my buddies that I grew up with, they all moved away for college, they all moved away to get jobs, and now, for example, I have one friend, she's living just up in Pennsylvania, and she's dying to get back in here because this is what she loves. This is where she grew up. This is where she wants to bring her family now. A bunch of my buddies that I grew up with, they're all, a lot of them are the same way. It's like, how do we get back here now? And so I apologize. I've almost waxed poetic at this point, but I think that the more specific we get, I think the more trouble we get ourselves into.
Oh, I think so.
You need to look at mistakes that you mentioned earlier other counties make, including York and Adams. The joke in Carroll County for the last 20 years is Carroll County has affordable housing. It's across the line in Pennsylvania. Well, I tell you what, a lot of them are starting to think about what they're paying in taxes and wondering if they made a mistake. And you can't have both. And I wonder with the state what they're thinking, pushing all this affordable housing. It's great, but the taxes you collect don't pay for anything. So that's fine if that's what you want, but then how are you going to pay for your infrastructure and everything around it. And I think that's what Adams and York, and of course, they're a commonwealth, so you can be in a different township and all that too, but I've talked to some of the people up there, I can't even believe what they're paying in taxes. It's double, triple what we pay.
So then the question is, in doing all of this, how do we live within our means? How do we spend the money in accomplishing all these things? And if it's enough money to continue to live within our means with schools and firehouses and security, I mean, you're right. We are the safest county, community in the state. We have the best schools, there's no doubt. Can they be maintained if we continue in the same path of revenue today? Can they be maintained if they stay in the same path of revenue today with the increased, growth that we have, that if it's only 1% commercial industrial? These are the big, hard questions that have to be asked to develop what is the means to an end. What's the end? Where do we want to, so taking these five and going back to Commissioner Garin, I agree, they're very subjective in a sense. Put some meat on the bones now. These are the good bones. But what's the end? How do we accomplish these results in 2035? And what is it going to have to look like to do that? Because it can't be the way we are right now. It's just, we can't be there.
Our job on a planning commission, I'm responsible. So I might be going down on the wrong limb on the wrong tree. But I think the planning commission has made an effort to be more than willing to tweak the master plan. But to do wholesale changes would be a detriment to the county. That's sort of the path that I think we're setting.
We've grandfathered quite a few
We've
things.
grandfathered a lot of things in, so that's tweaking. But to make grand wholesale changes in the zoning, the only one that has always bugged me, and you've alluded to it, is those daggone 3-acre lots that are supposed to be called conservation. And it just irks me as a farmer to see that, but it is what it is, so we deal with it. But to make wholesale changes in our master plan that has served us very well would be something that I don't think we could sustain. We're not going to change our county that fast. We don't want to, but to tweak it, I think we're open to that. And please, fill in the blanks.
It's when it comes to areas designated for growth, and specifically you look at the Freedom District. The crazy thing about the Freedom District is we're running out of time, and we're running out of properties that are significant. I mean, we can name them. And, on one hand, we can name the properties. And so if we want to fix something that's wrong, or make something better, make an improvement, or do a course correction, increase densities, whatever it is that we've only got 3 or 4 opportunities to do it. Unless you're going to not constrict the Freedom District, but expand it, which is kind of weird, because that's going the exact opposite direction, Ed, than I think you want to go. And so, and I'll tell you, I don't think the people down there in the Freedom District want you to increase densities on the properties that are available. I think what they want you to do is what you said you would do, because that's kind of where, and frankly, the one piece of property that's left that no one is talking about, I think it's between 50 and 80 acres. It's got water and sewer, and it is zoned for 1-acre lots. And that's what the community expects. Their anticipation is not that we're going to go in there and put, 200 homes in there. Where it's going to be 80.
Talking about the Wolf.
But
We're talking about Gibson.
Gibson property.
But what people don't understand, you don't need 1-acre lots to restrict the number of houses. What's wrong with only building a quarter of it with quarter-acre lots and having a very nice park.
We've seen that.
Oh, yeah, that's called clustering, we get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But what's wrong with that?
And we did that with Zabel.
Yeah, we did that with Zabel, we did it with, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But
One-acre lots are a waste of land.
what I will
It's already
do.
in the code, the county code.
Yeah.
Lot yield is lot yield,
But,
whether it's
Right.
10 houses or, 20 houses.
Right.
lot.
but Commissioner, where I push back on that is, okay, and the math on this is not huge, but I deal in basis points in my day job. And so if you take a 1 acre lot and we say, okay, you're gonna tax that at a certain millage rate, most of the value is in the house, right? In terms of what you're gonna tax. But let's suppose that the difference, the delta between the 1 acre lot and a half acre lot is $150, $200 a year in tax revenue. That's not gonna kill anybody in terms of making your budget. But you're talking to the guy who does in basis points. $200 in perpetuity to the county over 100 houses, that's a number from here to the end of time. By clustering, we're lowering our basis points in terms of what we're getting. I think clustering works. Y'all have, Mary, you are so patient. She is Joe, okay? She's, I put her through.
I gotta ask you, you're telling me kids want quarter-acre lots or smaller. They will spend more money for a house than they will for, very soon, the ones on 1 acre ain't gonna sell. So if they sell for, pick something, 500 and these sell for 600, they're gonna pay more taxes. It's.
Yeah, I'm talking from an economic standpoint for the county. I think we're giving up something. And then the other thing is, just so you know who you're talking to, I live on an acre. When the pandemic hit, people were looking, because they wanted the kids that have room to run. The other thing I'll tell you is that is your last opportunity in Eldersburg to create homes that, we want diversity in housing, right? I sound horrible when I talk, guys. I'm gonna go back and I'll listen to this tonight. I'm gonna say this out loud, okay, because you're hearing my accent. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. They burned a cross in my front yard. I have no patience for racism, okay? You wanna get me started on something, I'll do it. Everyone wants to live in a safe community, want the kids to have good education, and all of those things, regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your income, everybody wants those things. The people who live in the quarter-acre lots want them, the people who live in the half-acre lots want them, and the people who live on the 1 acre lots want them. We want diversity on both ends of the spectrum. The Gibson property is your last opportunity to build those 1 acre homes for people who aspire to upscale, not
But-
just, go ahead.
But currently, the over 55s are moving smaller. There's, again, no offense, I live on 26 acres. I wish I only mowed an acre. And I love it.
Yeah.
My kids, if I die, they're gonna sell it in a minute. None of them wanna live there. They wanna live on a quarter acre, and they probably spent more for that house on quarter acre than I did the 26. So who's paying more taxes? They are.
I hear, and
Yeah,
you and I are not gonna solve this problem.
Oh, I
But I'm just,
understand.
and I'm happy to buy you a beer, you can buy me an iced tea, and we'll
Yeah.
get it all figured out.
Yeah.
But in all
I'll do a
seriousness.
mixed drink.
Yeah, so, the thing about the inertia, if what we're saying is the reason for the plan and for these zoning codes is to create an expectation, is to allow people to have a certain amount of certainty. The problem with the self-storage place wasn't the fact that it was self-storage, it was the fact that it was flipping 5 stories.
It was.
5 stories.
It never was 5 stories.
Well, it wasn't 1 or 2 either.
It was 4.
It takes up a lot of property that could have been zoned just like the one where the car dealership is.
It's an eyesore.
We had that zoned for three different parcels. They bought the whole thing, and so there's one business there now.
Yeah.
So anyway, the thing about the Gibson property is if we want to cluster, have at it. You know, I'm fine with it. I mean, it doesn't affect, you know, it reduces the number of homes that are like mine when I go to sell my home to downsize, like you're saying. But again, the point is that if we want a spectrum of housing, that's the last opportunity to do that in that area. And again, there may be opportunities to expand the Freedom District and do more of what we're talking about doing. But again, that's a different thing.
Yep.
I think we're, I'm probably gonna overstep and all that stuff, and I'm looking at Daphne, and she's watching the clock, and she's like, we got a lot to get through here, and we're going down rabbit holes, so.
I want to say one thing real quick. I will not belabor this too much, but you know, Commissioner Rothstein had a good point. You know, financially, how are we going to put all these numbers together? What is the plan? I mean, I can agree with all of you up here on various things, but you know, it's great that everybody says, I want to have open land next meeting. We all love that. We all enjoy it. You know, nothing wrong with that. But then what's the trade-off? Because, you know we don't have enough economic development via, you know, commercial, industrial. That's where the real money's at. So the question becomes, yeah, it's nice to have that park. And I've mentioned this in planning and zoning, so I'm just repeating it from earlier today. Rec and Parks was in a couple meetings back about a grant. It's a $100,000 grant for trails. So it's great. County's paying 20, state's giving us 80. So it's 100,000. Challenge is, and we already know the answer, who's maintaining that trail 10, 20, 30 years out? County taxpayers are. There's nothing wrong with trails. I've got nothing against Rec and Parks. I'm just using the example. But where do we find that additional money to fund that and all the other wonderful things we want? It's not about what we want. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. But how are we going to fund it? And so there has to be that balance. And I've used that word a lot since we've all been in office. But, you know, the question is, what's the cost? I mean, the five of us know better than anybody, and trust me, I think we're probably all still having issues from it, the last budget session. We're starting the next one, I think we're 5 million in the red already, and we want to add things. And there's nothing wrong with adding things, but how do we economically pay for it? Perfect example that was discussed this morning. AgPres, we're 80,000 and change in. Okay, so we got 80,311 acres, and it's fantastic. It's a very mature program. It's been very successful. It's done a lot of the things we want to do it. That's $300 million in that 80,000 acres. We need $160 million on average to finish the last 20,000 acres. What's the cost? I'm not against it, but what's the cost and how do we get there? So the real question to me is, where do we find the funds? Because, you know, whether it's this year starting out at 5 million in the red or next year or the year after, you know, I don't think any of us, at least the five of us, whoever's in these seats in the future, want to beat their heads against the wall, because we all love Carroll County, stealing Commissioner Kyler's line. We all want to see things positive, but then where do we find the money? Because we can't run at a deficit. We don't have the magic credit card. So to me, this whole process has got to be one in which we look at things sometimes and go, hey, you know, you want that green space? I hear you. But if we give you this, this is what your taxes are going to be in 5 years. Are you okay with that as a county? Because I think it's too easy sometimes, and I think people, we all want what we want, and I get that, and everybody has differing opinions, but what's the cost? And I think that's the one thing we kind of forget sometimes, or the public even forgets. We all do. Because long-standing, yes, I might not want X, but if you're going to tell me my taxes are going to go up significantly, maybe I'll live with whatever development needs to be in this area that'll help offset that for me or my grandkids or whoever. And I think that's something we've all really got to look at in the big picture. Okay, I went on a little longer than I thought.
Well, what I'd like to suggest is that we begin working with the Planning Commission to dissect these main issues that we have up here and dig into them in a way that we begin to get a sense of, Commissioner Guerin, to your point, what is the role of county government in addressing these different things. Is there a role? Maybe there is not, as we get into these, looking at these questions of how we meet some of these things that are outlined here. One of the things that I'm really attentive to is the fact that we have an awful lot of plans that get written with great ideas that are almost impossible to implement because they're written in a way that are kind of pie in the sky types of things. I would like to have a master plan that is actionable at the end of the day and that gives some specific sense of who it is that's going to be implementing these things. So that's where I think when we begin to look at some of these topics, we can try to keep that conversation focused so that we have some specific ideas for what the role of county government is in implementing these, where we might need to partner with nonprofit groups, the private sector, state or local or state or regional agencies, but with very specific focus on implementable, actionable types of recommendations. But again, we've talked about all of these things in some way as being important. I think the next level of conversation, that next discussion, set of discussions, many discussions that we need to have are how do we tackle these and how do we tackle these in a way that we have some influence over, some way of directing an outcome around and not just kind of putting it out there as we'd love to do this, but we don't know how.
And I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think to your point, what Ralph suggested earlier, that inventory of land so we can see where we are, I think is probably going to be a good step in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And those kind of real, I mean, that's where some of the rubber starts to meet the road, is seeing what our limitations are as well as what our opportunities are. And then flowing from there with what our recommendations might be. And of course, don't know if we'll have time to get to the work plan, but at some point we'll talk about what we're doing to reach out to the community and get their feedback and their buy-in into this so that that can feed into the decision-making process as well. Does that sound like a good, at least kind of tentative path forward?
Thank you for corralling us.
I don't know that I did a good job. My next question, though, is whether we have time to begin. All right. Let's see what we can get done in about 10 minutes or so in terms of getting your feedback on how we might sort of begin to put some images around the master plan that could make it something we can begin communicating out to people.
I think you all know who I am, correct? I'm Chris Swam. I'm the digital communications manager, and that means I'm in charge of social media, the website, and kind of marketing what we're going to be doing here. So in front of you, you might have a piece of paper that looks a little bit like this. So we're going to do a little exercise, if you have a pen. And we're going to, if I say master plan, and what the Carroll County might look like here in 10 years, what are 3 words that come to mind? When I say master plan, what are 3 words that come to mind what Carroll County would look like in 10 years? What are the 3 words? Huh?
Have you said that yet?
3 words.
Okay.
Yes, 3 words, yes. Under 4 syllables, Commissioner Vigliotti.
I'll do my best.
And you can switch with Commissioner Rothstein if you want.
No,
You guys
we
can
can't.
trade. And then we'll write these up on the board. And would any staff like to participate? Anyone? You can. Daphne, you're participating. Good.
I'm participating.
I know Mary wants to participate. She loves to participate. There you go.
I got 6 words.
Really?
I do.
Are they 4 letters? You want to read them off? You want to start?
Sure,
Okay.
because there are more phrases. Small government, property owner driven. I guess that's 3 words.
Wow.
Property owner driven, agriculturally driven. I know. I know. I messed up.
We'll save
there.
them. Okay. That's good.
And then ag.
Ag, that's a big one. Okay. And I'll get these from you when we're done. Who's next?
I'll go next to some.
Commissioner Vigliotti.
I said family and identity, who we are as a county.
It's more than 1 word.
No one's following directions, Chris,
No.
in case you haven't noticed.
This is why I didn't go into teaching. This is exactly why I didn't go into teaching.
Our family identity, who we are. I also said agriculture, rural. And I said safety.
Safe. Where was that, Commissioner?
Who you
Yeah.
talking?
Rothstein? Safety and security. That is one of your favorites.
Focus.
He was safe and secure in the knowledge
Okay.
that I had it.
Yeah.
All right.
Chris,
Who's next?
I did 1 word.
What you got?
You did one? We planning and zoning follow directions?
Exactly. So you hear that, guys?
I said rural,
Rural, okay.
robust, and younger.
Robust and younger?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
10 years, right?
Yep. That's correct.
Some of mine repeat. I said rural,
Mm-hmm.
but I said great quality of life and affordable. And I did a parentheses and said, my 3 words are probably mutually exclusive.
Great quality of life. I've never used this thing, so this is kind of fun for me. Okay. Yes, Ralph.
I'm going to follow the group. Rural, educated, and safe.
Safe.
Okay.
Pastoral, vibrant, contemporary.
Ooh,
What did I get?
big word.
Pastoral, rural, and contemporary.
vibrant.
Vibrant. Look at this, watch this. Isn't that nice?
Magic.
You know, they make those that don't need a screen. I think I had those in elementary school. Blackboard.
What was the third?
Contemporary.
Using
Contemporary.
How much was that?
That was my first question that I wasn't going to ask today, but thank you, Commissioner Guerin.
Okay, now there's no spell check either, so
okay.
bear with me, guys.
You want some
All
more
right,
words?
anyone?
Yeah.
So you're getting into some common themes here. I said rural.
Rural,
I
okay,
said safe.
okay.
And hitting on something that I mentioned earlier that I think maybe be the key to this whole master plan is revenue positive.
Revenue?
It's not a word, that's 2 words, but
It's a conjoined phrase.
if you say so.
So, what?
It could be hyphenated.
It can be, there you go, the hyphen, thank you. Thank you. The hyphen makes it
All
work.
right. Education,
I got you back.
which I guess you could argue with educated education, same difference, more or less.
I think he just wants to write more words.
He does.
What?
Commerce,
Commerce?
yep.
Mhm.
You put a circle over your eye?
Usually
he's
it's a
like a
little
little
hard.
That's a
heart over
Disney.
the eye?
Usually
Just
it's
call
a
me
little
Walt.
hard.
Put a little heart over there?
Actually,
Okay.
how about a happy little tree over on the side? Like,
I won't get to that.
Make some clouds too, but I had agriculture, so we've already
Okay.
got that one up there.
I think we're,
Who else?
a couple outstanding.
Who hasn't gone?
Richard?
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 Have affordable. Zoning. And ag.
What was the second zone?
Zoning.
Zoning. So all of this
somehow, I'm gonna have to drop.
Roberta, did you do 3?
Did you do it in your group?
I did.
Okay, let's see.
I'm not part of the groups, but I did too, the rural on beautiful vistas and managed growth directed in focused areas.
Yes.
Seriously?
More than one word, but anyway.
I know you yelled at.
I need another monitor.
Can't follow directions.
This is good. Because that's funny you bring it up. Because that's kind of the, with the website, I have to build a whole new website for this, and we're in the process of doing that. And that's a key part of what we're doing, is the Vista. So,
And
Daphne,
Daphne, you did it also.
so what we'll do
Did you
is
do
this,
this?
take this and find,
Tell him, Chris.
What?
Daphne.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, we need to know.
she's got
Well,
rural.
I've already got rural. I
Okay.
took Roberta's idea and made it 2 words, which was focused growth.
Oh, that's expeditious.
I know.
That could be hyphenated too.
Yeah.
So that's-
And then I also
I
said
don't know. She had too many
sustainable.
words. I don't know.
It was focused growth.
No.
Focus.
And a lot more language.
Yeah.
Right.
What's really interesting is that
You
the
gotta
show's
be
on the
eloquent
same wavelength.
sometimes.
The one difference that I had, that I think maybe Commissioner Guerin touched on a little bit, but I said economically sustainable.
Yeah.
So
Revenue
same-
positive.
Revenue
Yeah,
positive, sustainable.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of terms coincide.
Similar kind of.
Yeah. Got some good
For,
themes.
as an engineer, I thought you'd say pastoral, but no.
You got some good
I'm an
themes.
engineer, I can't spell procedural.
You expect me to? All right, so this is what, I'll take
I
this
was gonna say charter.
and put this all together and somehow it has to be Carroll County Master Plan using this artwork that we have here that will be included in all the planning artwork that they'll be doing to the public. And I think this is enough.
I think
I
we're
think the
right with-
one word that sticks out is what? Rural.
Yep.
I think that's, I think this passed the world too.
That counts for rural.
Okay. Thank you, guys. It's a great exercise. We've never done this before.
Hey, Chris, and one thing, you often say, which I think we lose track of.
Life is good.
Yeah.
Size-wise, we're in the middle.
We are.
Yeah, we're not on the small end, we're in the middle.
Out of 24 jurisdictions, 23 counties in the city, we're number 9. Size, 172,000, give or take.
Yeah.
Economically, education, we're way above. I mean,
Of course.
everybody. Safety, we are way above. So for the, and it goes right back, Ralph, to what you were saying. This is positive. For where we are in the numbers to where we are in performance
Maybe.
is such a disconnect in a positive.
Because growing up, I thought, we're in a small county. But we're not.
No,
Not now.
We're not.
nope. Number 9.
Yeah.
You got it, Vanna, you got it.
The other part, like,
Work program.
Yeah, life is good.
Third down.
I'm surprised you didn't say charter.
Ooh.
Aaron could be listening.
Latest name now.
Whoa. This is the eye chart portion of the meeting.
Seriously?
Okay, we're bumping up against 3 o'clock here, so I don't want to keep anybody later than we promised. What I am going to do is hand out what our proposed work plan is. So I just want to take one and pass it around. I told Chris to put this up, but we're not going to have time to really kind of zoom in on it. But just to give you a really quick high-level view of things, and then we can come back and revisit this at some future time. But basically, what we're looking at is three distinct elements to this process, which would be an output process. So that's our communication arm of things. So what are we putting out to people? How are we putting it out there? That includes things like a logo or a tagline, which is what we were just starting to work on here with Chris. It includes a web presence, social media engagement, and interactive content, as well as any plan documents themselves. So that's the output, the communication. The input is really focused on what our consultations will be. And that includes breakouts for consultations that will be with and led by the Board of Commissioners, by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's my...
Take your medicine.
That's my hook. Okay, so the board, the planning commission, you guys have very distinct roles, and sometimes they're very prescribed roles. But then, how are we continuing to get input from people? We're looking at setting up an internal coordinating committee within the county agencies and departments, so that we're getting expert feedback and information from them. Setting up a series of focus group conversations, so that would be with different affinity groups, like, for instance, realtors and developers, or the ag community, or something like that. And then possibly having some targeted work groups. So we have the economic development and land use study and the housing study that were both designed to support this process. They've had a number of, or they will have a number of recommendations that I would love to get a group of people together to kind of take apart and see what could feed into this master plan that would be worth pursuing from those studies. Informal input, including showing up at events and engaging with people at community events, and exploring ways to involve youth in this process. Then we have our prescribed public meetings and public hearings. So feedback sessions, as well as formal public hearings. The other part of this is the actual putting the plan together. So it's pulling our background information together and sharing that out. It's trying to kind of drive down on those and extract from the background information what it is that we need to be looking at here, and what we want to end up recommending for objectives and strategies and things like that, and then putting in an implementation framework together. That's super high level. This is a work in progress and will change as we go, because if certain phases take longer than anticipated, we just need to make sure that we're taking the amount of time that we need to cover it all. So,
Daphne, I'm just curious, if all things go well, when do you hope to have this thing all done?
well, according to my chart, and we have to make sure it all stays on one page, no matter how tiny the text gets, the end of September of next year. That's super aggressive.
Okay.
Super aggressive. But depending on what we come up with as issues that we really want to get into detail on, I think it's possible. It's possible.
Are we scheduled to come back together?
Yeah, so the next joint work session that I have is not for another couple of months, because we're looking at getting all of the background data out there and digesting it. So probably at the very beginning of January, but we can look at scheduling that sooner if there's a desire to do that. All right, so we'll go over this with you at a later date, but get out your magnifying glasses and take a look at this when you can. I sure can, yeah. Yep.
And anything else to end us up?
No, just to, again, appreciate everybody making the time to come together today. As you can imagine, it's a bit of a challenge to schedule these meetings with so many folks, but appreciate the time. And we will work to get new dates on the calendars and working with staff to start scheduling so that we can get another good group together for discussion.
And thank you, everyone, and we've had diverse conversations. can we agree to adjourn?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.